Hi everybody, this is going to continue on with our lesson on 5.1 and 5.2, but this one's going to focus on 5.2. All right, so a couple things we've already talked about is that a linear function means it has a constant rate of change. What that means is the x column is going up by a constant rate and the y column is also going up by a constant rate. And what I mean is if we look at this x column, can you see this is adding 1 every time, right? So it's just plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1. Let's look at the y column. That's down by 3, that's down by 3, that's down by 3, and that's down by 3. So they're all down by 3. So yes, this one is linear because it is constant. It's the same on both sides. Like this one's the same and this one's the same. Now, remember that when we talk about slope, one of our definitions is change in y over change in x. So how much is y changing by? It's changing by -3. How much is x changing by? It's changing by 1. And so our slope is equal to -3 because -3 over 1 is just -3. Okay, let's look at the next one. Down by 1, up 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 by 1. So those are all going up by 1. And when we go this way, down by 3, down by 1, up by 1, up by 3. That is not a linear function. It's not the same. Like this is the same, the x's are the same, but the y's are not the same. That is not linear. Let's take a look at the next one. Up by 3, up by 3, up by 3. Okay, that's constant. That's good. Let's look at the other side. Down by 1, down by 1, down by 1. Also constant. So yes, this one is linear. What is the rate of change? The rate of change, well, the y is changing by 1 every time. The x is changing by 3 every time. And so our slope is -1/3. Okay, let's look at this last one. Down or up by 5, up by 5, up by 5. That's constant. Down by 6, down by 2, down by 2. No, this one's not constant. If it's not constant, it's not a linear function. Okay, so a lot of this information we saw in the previous video, but we need to talk a little bit more about the x sub 1, the y sub 1, the x sub 2, and y sub 2. So we're going to go through here. We're going to find the slope between these 2 points. Keep in mind the first coordinate, the first x coordinate, and the first y coordinate have to belong to the same ordered pair. What I normally do is I just label it so that I know this is x sub 1, this is y sub 1, this is x sub 2, and this is y sub 2. And so then when I do my subtraction, I know what I have to subtract. Okay, I just noticed in this formula that whoever typed this up put y1 minus y2 and then x1 minus x2. It's normally written the other way, but either way works. So I'm going to go ahead and do it with the y2 and the y1 minus x2 and x1. So let me rewrite the formula and then we'll work it out. Okay, I'm going to take y sub 2, that's 4, minus 5, because that's y sub 1. X sub 2 is 1 minus 3. And so when I do my subtraction, this comes out to be a -1 over -2. When you have a negative over a negative, it becomes a positive. And so this is 1/2. So the slope on this one is 1/2. Now sometimes you have to be really careful with your positive and negative signs. So once again, I'm going to label x1, y1, x2, and y2. And so when I do my subtraction, I'm going to take y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So y sub 2 is -3 minus y sub 1 is 1 over x sub 2 is 1 minus -2. And so in my numerator, I have a negative minus a negative. -3 minus 1 is -4. And a negative followed by another negative is a plus. So 1 minus negative 2 is actually 1 plus 2, and that is 3. And so the slope here is negative 4/3. Let's look at this one. X sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. So we take y sub 2 minus y sub 1, that's 2 minus 2, over x sub 2 minus x sub 1, that's 5 minus 1. That's 0 over 4. 0 over 4 reduces. It reduces down to 0. So the answer on this one is 0. One more example. So we're going to take y sub 2 minus y sub 1, that's 3 minus negative 1, over x sub 2 minus x sub 1, that's 5 minus 5. In my numerator, I have to be careful with my positives and negatives. Negative, negative means plus. So this is 4, because 3 plus 1 is 4, over 0. Now anything over 0 is undefined. And so if we're ever asked what is the slope of this line, we just say it's undefined. There's not a number, it's just undefined. Now sometimes the data is given to us in a different form. So these were coordinates. These I have tables. But remember that this is just like, we could call this x sub 1, x sub 2, x sub 3, x sub 4. And this would be y1, y2, y3, y4. And so we're still going to do the same thing. So I can take any two of these. So let me just say I'm going to take the first one and the second one. You really could do the third and the fourth or whatever. So I'm still going to do the same form. That is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. And so my y sub 2 is 3. My y sub 1 is 5. My x sub 2 is 7. And my x sub 1 is 5. And so now I have a negative 2 over positive 2, and that is a negative 1. So my answer here is negative 1. If I had chosen any of the other ones, I would have come up with the same exact answer. All right, same thing here. We could say that this is x sub 1, x sub 2, and the same thing for my y's. So again, I can pick any of them. You know what, just to change things up, I'm going to pick these two. Now, I have to go in order. So y sub 2 minus y sub 1, I'm going to start with a 13 minus 11. And up here, if I go 13 minus 11, I have to go 6 minus 5. You have to go in the same order with your x's as you do as your y's. So this is 2 over 1, so the slope here is 2. And again, if I had done any of them, I would have come up with the same thing too. Okay, let's turn the page. Okay, this is asking us about rate of change. Remember, an important word with rate of change is the word per. So for the data table to the left is the rate of change for each pair of consecutive days the same. So what they're basically asking is it going up by the same amount every time? That's what that question is asking. Is it changing by the same amount every time? So if we look at this, it's going up by 1, 1, 1, 1. So these definitely are going up by the same amount every time. Over here, what's this going up by? It's going up by 15. And how about this one? Also 15, also 15, also 15. So the answer is yes. The next question says, what does it represent? Well, I would say it represents a change of $15 per day. If you're renting a computer, I don't know where you rent a computer these days, but let's say you rent a computer. They charge you $15 per day. That's what it is. So that's the cost of renting a computer. They're charging you $15 per day. And then the last part says, calculate the rate of change using day 2 and day 5. So I've been saying that you can choose any of them. And you really can. You can choose any of them that you want to. They're asking us on this one, okay, choose any of them, but you know what? Let's choose day 2 and day 5. So I'm going to take my y's in my numerator. That's 120 and 75. Those are the y's. So my change in y is 120 minus 75. My change in x is 5 minus 2. So if I get my calculator, this is 45 over 3, and that reduces down to 15. What do you notice? The slope is the rate of change. Okay, let's look at a couple more graphs. Slope and rate of change are the same thing, okay? They mean the same thing. Sometimes we have context, like words, and like on this one. In this one, we don't have any words. But on this one, they give us coordinates. So we have these two coordinates. Once again, I can call this x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. And so if I do my subtraction, I'm going to take 2 minus 2 over 1 minus 4. And that's going to be 0 over negative 3. What does 0 over negative 3 reduce to? It reduces down to 0. So the slope here is 0. We're going to emphasize that a little bit more right in the next section. Okay, how about this one? Again, x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. So if we take our y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1 is negative 3 over 0. And anything divided by 0 is undefined. So the slope of this line is undefined. Okay, last section. The slope of any line will ultimately fall into one of 4 categories. So I typed these in there. I want you to write them down. If it's going up, rising to the right, then it is positive. If it's going down, falling down to the right, it is negative. It could be horizontal, and that would be the slope is 0. This is a positive slope. This is a negative slope. And lastly, if it's straight up and down, that's called vertical. That is too steep. That is undefined. It's so steep we can't even define it. Okay, we have talked a lot about slope in the last 2 videos. Now we're going to have some time to do an assignment on slope.